I mean, I've never had a client come to me and say, I'd like to hire you and I'd like you to send me 50 pages of analytics reports every week. That's never what they say, thank God. What they should say is, Philippa, what do I need to know to run my business better? In my experience, people don't do anything unless you tell them to. I mean, you have to really proactively ask for what you want them to do.
You really do.
You really do, yes. And so if your call to action is at the bottom of the page, then if somebody doesn't consume the whole page, and again, we can see how far down the page did they go. So if they don't go all the way down to the bottom of the page, you're never going to see your call to action. You're never going to get the chance to ask them to do what you want them to do. This is the genius of Amazon, by the way.
Philippa Games has clocked over 25 years in digital marketing strategy and analytics, consulted with nearly 500 clients, and worked with websites that have cumulatively generated hundreds of millions of dollars. Philippa leads owners and marketers to find new insights in their web analytics that will grow their business and cut wasted spending. She's done this for clients in North America, Europe, and the Middle East, translating the numbers into transformational ideas that move the business forward. Her clients have created successful new lines of business, new products and services, new strategies and synergies between departments, all the while reducing spend or completely stopping ineffective marketing strategies and tactics. If you're wondering where your website is leaking money or are just starting to build one for your business, this episode is for you. Enjoy the show. Philippa, thank you so much for coming on. It's a pleasure to have you here with us today.
Hey, good morning, Brian. Hey.
Good morning. Good morning. All right. So, you know how we like to do this show. We like to understand our entrepreneurs. We like to understand our guests, who you are. So if you can, give us a little background of, where did you grow up and what was your childhood like?
Oh no, you never told me you were going to ask me that.
Surprise.
Okay, so, well, hopefully you can tell from my accent, I'm a Brit. I grew up in London. And I've been living in the US, I don't know, quite a long time, actually, something over 30 years. So, but I hopefully still talk mostly like a Brit.
Well, there's definitely a lovely accent. I definitely enjoy the British accent, and so do a lot of people. So what made your family decide to come over here?
Oh, they didn't. I did.
Oh, okay. All
No,
right.
I just, I decided to come over to the US and see if what it was like, and just try something different. I had a bit of money saved up, so I was able. I didn't do anything illegal, I hasten to add, and I am completely legal now. Yeah, it was a kind of exploration, I must say. It was interesting.
Awesome. And was that kind of explorative spirit, was that something that, was instilled in you by your parents? Did they like to travel and get out and see things as well?
I don't know. They went on holidays and stuff, but yeah, um, who knows? Who knows? Maybe it's a recessive gene.
No, you never can tell. You never
Mm.
can tell. So you came over here, you wanted something different, and obviously you found it. Something started working. So what was your first job or entrepreneurial venture when you got over here?
Well, my first job wasn't entrepreneurial. So, when I first got here, my first actual real legal job, um, I was I was living in Chicago at the time. And I was working for a major national nonprofit organization based in Chicago, but with a chapter in every state. And it was quite interesting. Okay, I'm going to date myself a little, but it was, towards the beginning of the internet really being big.
Hmm.
Um, and, but I was much younger, of course. And they were looking to get every state chapter hooked up using the internet so that they could communicate, obviously, much more efficiently, because before that, it was the world of faxes and telephone calls and kind of, it's basically one to one as opposed to many to many or one to many.
Right.
And for some reason, I got an interview there, and they saw in me somebody who could evangelize doing this, and sort of inspire people, because honestly, because it was fairly early on, and I don't want to say this about all nonprofits, but I think in many ways nonprofits are actually not risk takers. There are
Mm.
people who work in nonprofit organizations who are incredibly well motivated and have fantastic sense of mission, but they may not be early adopters of technology, or so it was a very interesting mix of yes, this is great, let's do this, all the way through to over my dead body, literally pretty much over my dead body. Um, so yeah, that was my first kind of dipping my toe into the whole internet thing, and I just really thought it was amazing. And when I got my green card, um, which allowed me to stay, obviously, without being dependent on employment, that was when honestly I just went, right, that's it. I want to be out on my own doing this. So I left the job and started my own consulting practice.
Oh, wow. Okay. So
So
you took that real world experience from working at that nonprofit and getting them hooked up,
right,
essentially connected to the internet,
right.
and went and just started doing that for other companies then.
Well, it's I always feel like I do a lot of teaching. So I taught at 3 different international business schools. I really enjoy teaching, um, and I write. I mean, I'm actually in the middle of writing another book, and for me, I'm not that interested in the technology for the sake of the technology. I'm interested in what it can do. And I'm
Mm.
interested in communicating what it can do in ways that people who need to understand it can understand it. Because a lot of the time, which is why I'm writing the current book, what you see online, I mean, there's a tremendous amount of information about web analytics online, but much of it is very techy. And
Mm.
for many, many business people, that's incredibly intimidating and overwhelming. And, they want to know what they need to know. They don't need to know, they don't want to know, like, what's a custom dimension and why should I care? Right.
I don't even know.
Right. So, and you don't need to, that's really been my thing. Consulting from the perspective of helping people to run their businesses better, using the tools, but not with the tools running the show, with the business running the show.
Yeah, so let's get into that. Let's start thinking and talking about how the understanding of what these business owners are looking at can help them in their business without all the techie jargon behind it. In the material you sent over, you mentioned something about digital strategies that people think, big air quotes there, think are helping their businesses. So, what are these business owners doing digitally that they think, hey, I'm doing this and it's going to move the needle, but it actually won't?
Well, okay. So firstly, we should emphasize that for every business, there's there's a different answer. I mean, one thing that I really worry about is one size fits all answers. So,
Mm,
we can talk about this, and we can talk about how to find out what's important to your business. But I think that's really an important thing to say up front, that I can say, oh, I often find that X, but that doesn't mean that X applies to every single person that's listening to the show. Okay.
of
So,
course.
but so the key thing is for each business to really understand what it's trying to do. And we probably had shows around that, in terms of what are the goals of the business, right? What are the performance evaluators in the business? But unfortunately, it still is amazing to me how sometimes I meet people who can't really articulate that well. Um, and so the first piece that's really important is to be really clear about what you want your business to be doing and how you'll know when it's doing well. And that doesn't always just mean money, more money coming in than going out. I mean, obviously that's the bottom line and that's important, but there's also, for example, if your business is one that relies on a lot of repeat customers, um, are we retaining people as well as we should? And if not, why not? So understanding your own key strategies is really important, because then you can figure out whether or not they're working. And so every business has its goals, and yes, okay, so making more money is normally the biggest goal, but there are other goals, and that could be increasing our subscriber base, right? Improving our retention rates, reducing the number of customer service calls that we have to provide. And the reason I'm saying that, I'm not a customer service expert, but because that can be provided online in some ways on your website, and that can perhaps both improve your response to customers and also reduce some of your cost of doing that, right?
Mm.
So so you need to be really clear about what it is you're trying to achieve, and then we can have a good conversation about how what you're trying to do is working right now and how maybe we can improve on that. I mean, so I like to say that my favorite question from a prospective client is I mean, I've never had a client come to me and say, I'd like to hire you and I'd like you to send me 50 pages of analytics reports every week, right? That's
Yeah.
that, that's never what they say, thank God. What they want to say, what they say, or what they should say is, Philippa, what do I need to know to run my business better? Right. What do I need to know to run my business better? And then we can have a really good conversation because I can say, what would running your business better look like? And we can talk about their strategy. And then I can take a look at what's going on and what their numbers look like and say, okay, here's where perhaps things aren't going as well as they should. Now,
Mm.
what then tends to come out of it is that sometimes they back to your original question, which I know was a while ago, about what do people do that sometimes doesn't work. So sometimes people do jump into a specific marketing tactic, like maybe social media. I mean, people will jump into social media because there's so much buzz around social media that they think, this is going to work really well. And in my experience, often it doesn't. It depends on very good targeting of your messaging, which you can do, but you need to really think that through, and obviously good messages. But people who are on social media aren't necessarily looking to buy products and services. Sometimes they are, but a lot of the time they're there to talk to friends, watch cat videos or whatever, watch the
Right.
news. Um, and and so what I do often see, and I mean this is a pattern, I have to be honest, is when you look at the analytics, you can see where people come from. So you can isolate the people that come from different social media campaigns. And then you can see how long do they spend and where do they go and what do they do. And very typically the people who come from social media spend less time and do less of the things you want them to do, than, for example, visitors from like an organic search like Google.
Mm.
Because if you go to a search engine like Google and you search for something, that means that you are proactively looking for something that can answer your need,
Right.
right? And that means that if I can answer your need on my website, then you want to know more, hopefully. So being able to use your analytics to do things like isolate the different sources that people are coming from and then compare the results of people from different sources, that can be really eye-opening in terms of what actually works in your marketing.
Mm. All right. So let's say that we do have somebody that's come to the website from Google. They're in search of a specific answer to their question, or maybe even a specific product, maybe that
Right.
they're aware, right? And they go they go to the website, they click around, they do some stuff, but they don't end up filling out any kind of like contact form. They don't give their information at all. They're just looking around. What can we uh, what can we use to help understand the behaviors and the patterns of that particular person and how we can better optimize what we're doing?
Obviously, and I mean, I don't know if your listeners are aware of this, the analytics tracking is completely anonymous and it has to be by law, right? And that law is, there are different versions of laws like that, but basically pretty much every country has got laws like that. You've probably heard of GDPR, which is the European law, which is really, really strict. I mean, first of all, you have to ask me if it's actually okay to record your visit,
Mm,
even though it is anonymous, right? That's called
right.
consent. And actually, it's important to say, as a result of that, all the numbers that you're seeing about who's on your website, how many people you get, are probably undercounting
Mm,
because of all the people that are blocking tracking, either by blocking, cookies or by denying consent when they get that question. So the analytics that you're looking at are not absolutely not accurate. In other words, they're not Nielsen, they're not auditable. If
Right.
it says you got 100 visitors this week, that does not mean you got 100 visitors this week. You probably got more. We don't know exactly how many visitors you got. So what we're
Mm.
using the analytics for is to look at patterns and trends. And so that's what we can do. If somebody does not choose to interact with us, we can't sort of dig it. I mean, there are sort of tools that say they can dig in and find out who you are, and I'm not sure about those. But we can look at the patterns and trends. So we can say, if somebody came to our website looking for a certain product or service and they left without any kind of interaction, and so, but we do provide that product and service. So, and we could say, where did they go? Did they look at the description of our products? Did they look at our reviews? I mean, did they look at the content where we try to establish credibility and trust around the quality of what we provide? If they didn't look at that content, obviously that's could be a problem because they just didn't get the message. If they did, maybe it wasn't persuasive enough, right? So what we'd be looking for is clues about what we can do better. We need to understand what they were looking for, if as much as we can, and sometimes you can't. Sometimes that's difficult, right? But we can get some idea of obviously the keywords that brought them in. If it's an ad campaign, we can analyze. I mean, we can, if we set up the ad campaign well, we can look at visitors from every specific ad campaign that we do.
Mhm.
So again, we can see where did they go, what did they do, what did work for them, did they watch videos, did they watch the videos about the product, right? And with a video, we can say, not only did they watch the video, but how much of the video did they watch? Did they watch 3 seconds and get bored and walk away, or did they watch the whole thing? By the way, you can do that with podcasts as well.
Yes, you can.
Yes, you can. So so we can that's part of what we're trying to do here is to say what are we, where are we falling down, and we can also look at things like heat maps. We can see where people's attention is drawn to on a page, and we can start analyzing, for example, in my experience, people don't do anything unless you tell them to. I mean, you have to really proactively ask for what you want them to do.
You really do.
You really do, yes. And so if your call to action is at the bottom of the page, you've only got one call to action, which is, and it's at the bottom of the page, then and it's a long page, then if somebody doesn't consume the whole page, and again, we can see how far down the page did they go. So if they don't go all the way down to the bottom of the page, you're never going to see your call to action. You're never going to get the chance to ask them to do what you want them to do. This is the genius of Amazon, by the way, because a long time ago, they figured out, that very easy click now, buy in one click button at the very top of the screen.
Oh yeah.
And that's designed for people who, and Amazon was the first people to do that, right? And that's designed for people who know exactly what they want. They don't want any messing about. It's just give it to me now, click, click, done. Right.
Right.
And it was brilliant. And lots of other people do that now, but it's a really important point that you need to direct people to what you want them to do, and you need to do it in multiple places, at points where they might be saying, okay, I'm sort of interested, not sure, and you're going, okay, let me give you some more, right?
Right. Which is why in a lot of websites, obviously being an entrepreneur, having a business, I pay attention to these types of things as I'm scrolling through other people's sites. You'll see multiple buttons as you scroll down the page in different areas, different breakpoints where you can opt in or you can purchase.
Right.
That's what you're talking about, right?
Yes. Yep.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely.
And we can prove it. I mean, one of the things I like about this is that you can test and you can prove things. And in fact, you should test. You shouldn't necessarily make major changes without running some tests. But so, for example, if we have a page and we have 5 different places where you can say, click here to get more, or something much more motivating than that, actually, claim your free gift now or whatever, or start your free trial or whatever it is, we can see exactly which of the 5 buttons people clicked. So we can tell, I mean, and especially if we put different wording on each of them, we can see which was the wording that, got most people to click.
Speaking of wording, I wanted to touch on something real quick. You mentioned, just as an example, the word free in a couple different of those results, right? Um, I've heard this, but I don't know it to be true. And it may have changed, obviously. But what I have heard is that if you put that kind of verbiage into your copy, it will actually get you downranked in Google, because they even if you have a like an email sign up form, sometimes they'll view that as a gateway, so to speak, or a payment gateway, and then it's not free anymore, so we're not going to promote that. Is that Have you seen that? Are you aware of that?
I don't know about the Google thing. I certainly used to hear about. I know I've heard that before, but I don't remember hearing a lot about it recently. What I do think is, having said, I was kind of just coming up with stuff off the top of my head. Screaming free too much obviously just makes you sound cheap and desperate. Um, and on the other hand, there are times, like I said, when, like, if you have a software package and you want to give somebody a free trial, that's a perfectly legitimate um, use of free. So I think that if it's in context and your site is and your products are clearly legitimate, then you can, that's okay. I mean, you just don't want to, yeah.
Yeah, like you said, you don't want to just slap that word everywhere and expect all of a sudden you're going to have 100 opt-ins a day and 20 extra sales. That's not how
No,
that particular
no.
languaging works. And when we're talking about where people go and how they interact with your site. And again, another thing that you sent over was that there are potential areas or holes in the bucket, so to speak, where people can pass through, or essentially where the entrepreneur is losing money. Can you give us some examples of what that might look like?
Yeah, and I think what we just talked about, as in the lack of sufficient or motivating calls to action, is a big one.
Mm.
Like,
Hmm.
don't let me get to the bottom of the page without giving me some idea of what I should do next. Another one that's very interesting is if you have a lot of products, then presumably on your website you've got a search engine that's on your website, not Google, but the search on your website.
Right.
Um, People, I think, don't appreciate what an amazing marketing research tool that is. So if people use, well, don't bury your internal site search. A lot of people put it like on the top navigation bar at the top, which
Uh-huh.
means that as soon as you scroll down the page, it disappears, which is not helpful because then somebody can't see it.
Right.
Um, because it's a really great tool. If people are using it and they type in there what they expect to find on your site, that's great clues about exactly that. What do they think you can provide? And if you see a lot of searches for things that you can provide but you don't, that can be a great indicator of what people who are coming to your website are demanding, and maybe give you some ideas for new products or new services. And in my own practice, I have several examples where we've dreamed up entirely new products and services, based on, which are within the expertise of the business, right? But something that they just weren't doing at the time, but based on what people were putting into the site search.
That's fascinating. I
Um,
I would have never thought about that. This is good stuff. This is good stuff. Keep going.
I mean, there's also really important is how people describe your products and services in the search engine, because
Mm.
again, if they're using words which are not the words that you use, that's also really important, because it goes back to your promotion, your keywords, right? What you're putting in, what you're trying to promote on. Um, and really understanding if your visitors and your target audiences understand your jargon. I mean, in industries where there's a lot of jargon, obviously in like technology, healthcare, there's lots and lots of or accounting, that's another one. There's a lot of jargon. And consumers, if your audience is a consumer lay audience, they don't necessarily understand all those words. So you need to speak the language of your visitors as opposed to your language.
Hmm.
I can tell you one of my favorite stories. This is a very old story, but I still love telling it. If you, which is
Oh,
speaks to
please.
this point. Well,
We love stories.
it's not an entrepreneurial example, I'm afraid, but it makes the point. I used to when I was starting out with my own business, I did do SEO, search engine optimization, well, which I don't do now. I mean, I find analytics much more interesting. But they so this association was an association of plastic surgeons, and they had a on their website they had a member database, so a database of surgeons, and it was a member benefit so that people could come along and say and look up a surgeon in their area.
Mm-hmm.
And they wanted to be number one in Google for the search term rhinoplasty. And I said, well, I would imagine that's pretty easy, because I doubt that there's a huge amount of competition for that, because your person who's going to come to your website isn't going to go to Google and put in rhinoplasty, right?
Right.
They're going to put in
Nose job.
nose job, right? And when I tell this story when I'm speaking, I stop there and the whole audience screams out nose job.
Yeah, right.
And the thing, the association was quite horrified, and they said, "But we're professional surgeons. We don't do nose jobs." And I said, "Yes, no, of course, but you have to get people in with the words that they will expect to see, and then you can tell them that it's officially called a rhinoplasty, right?" But I've seen this happening, honestly, in technology, in accounting. And accountants tend to promote themselves and say, we'll do your general ledger for you or something like that. And people don't search for that stuff. They don't care. The search engine will tell you what words, also not only what products and services people are looking for that you might not have, but also specifically what words they think in around what you do, which is really helpful. And it can be great clues. I mean, I remember I worked for an engineering company, and they were a distributor, and they just distributed thousands of different electrical parts or manufacturing and so on. And some of the parts over time would become obsolete, and they'd get replaced, and their replacements would have a different name. And their sales were going down. And when we looked into they hadn't looked into their site search in any depth. And when we did, we discovered that a lot of people were putting in old part names or numbers. And the search engine would just come back and say, sorry, we haven't got that. And so the visitor obviously would go to another source. And it was a really simple fix, right? You just need a lookup table that maps an old part name onto what's the replacement part, right?
Right.
And boom, problem solved. Well, that part of the problem anyway, but until we looked into what's going on in the search engine, we had no idea that was a problem.
So, and with modern websites, I know most of them nowadays do have that search function in them. And this might be getting a little bit techie, but I'm just curious, like, where do you go to find that data? Like, where is that housed? I mean, I imagine it's different on the back end of every site, but like, I don't know where to look.
So if you're running something like Google Analytics, which is where I mostly do all my work, you can automatically hook that up into your analytics, and it will report out again what people searched for, and then beyond that you can say, okay, did they then stay on the site, which pages did they go to, and so on, to make sure that their search led them to the right content.
Okay, that brings up another question. We were talking about privacy earlier and being very careful with those types of things. Is there any concern about being out of compliance with privacy if you're hooking up Google to your website to do analytics?
Well, yes. I mean, I know, for example, in healthcare, there's concern. Google, is released Google Analytics 4, which is a fairly new version, saying that its privacy features were very much enhanced. The data that's set, it's illegal to collect or to store any personal data in your Google Analytics. So in other words, if you have an e-commerce site and you sell something to somebody, obviously they're putting in their name, their address, their credit card number, etc. That does not appear in the analytics. Obviously, it's going to come through and go into your CRM,
Right.
but the analytics should only be recording the sale, what was sold, obviously, because that contributes to understanding behavior patterns, and the amount of the sale. Typically, we can see, for example, where it was sold, like geographically where it was sold. But even there, Google has some safeguards so that if the numbers get too small, it doesn't give you all that data. So, for example, what that means is, in other words, if I only have one sale in a given city, then clearly I could correlate that very easily with the name of the person who bought that, so I know who that visitor was.
True.
So then Google does seem to have some safeguards around that, so that to make it, so that you can't just put all that data together and come up with that had to be that guy. So
Right.
I mean, I know in healthcare, because the regulations in healthcare tend to be much more onerous, there are concerns, especially in Europe. But in general, small business, there's no small businesses yet being prosecuted for privacy violations under GDPR or similar legislation. I mean, basically, they're going after the big guys, which is not to say that people shouldn't comply, obviously, with the legislation. But I mean, I'm not worried about using Google Analytics, I should say.
Okay. That's the main thing that I wanted to get to right there is should we be worried about that?
Well, and I'm not a lawyer,
Okay.
and if you're in a business which is extremely sensitive, such as healthcare, for privacy issues, then absolutely you should be talking to your company lawyers. And I do not want to say, that my opinion is legally valid. I mean, obviously need to say that.
Yeah, and that's definitely a good point. Before you go just diving into that and hooking everything up, yeah, it's a good idea, especially if you're dealing like, with healthcare, anything in the financial services space. Those types of topics are highly regulated, obviously. So yes, guys, please do consult a legal attorney about this if you have one on staff, or go hire someone, have a consultation, because yeah, we're trying to grow your business here, not get you sued into obscurity.
But having said that, I mean, I would say that I have come across examples where, I mean, you do need to check that you're not storing any personal data. I have come across examples where the developers, I mean, they don't know, just fair enough, have done things like create personalized web pages for people. So you buy something
Mm,
on my site, or you fill in a contact form, and you get directed to a welcome page that says, "Hi, Brian, lovely that you signed up," or something. And something like your email address or your name gets put into the title of the page by the developer, because they're trying to do this nice warm fuzzy thing. But
right.
unfortunately, that page title is by default collected in analytics. And as soon as you get something like that embedded in it, then it's not in compliance with privacy regulations, and that is a
Mm,
problem. So I mean, I have seen that happening. It creeps in, and that absolutely is something that I would have to flag to the client and say, we need to get this. I mean, because there's nothing wrong with the copy saying "Hi, Brian," because the
right.
analytics aren't going to report that, but you can't have it in the URL or the title of the page.
Okay. Yeah, that is definitely good to know because, like you said, a lot of companies they will create a profile, for their customers so they can interact with them, and customers can
Right.
interact with each other on the site, and it's kind of like a pseudo social network kind of thing. But I'm very glad that you mentioned that because yeah, it's definitely something that we need to pay attention to and watch out for, because once it's in, like you say, once it's in the back end of the website, if somebody knows how to pull that information out, well, they can see it. There's your name, there's your email, maybe
Right.
even a phone number, how we're all doing that two-factor authentication nowadays. So, yeah, very good points. Something else that I also wanted to touch on with you, thinking about, what maybe opportunities are being missed. You mentioned in what you sent over the hidden gems of your analytics. And I'm just real curious to know, like, what are these hidden gems that you're talking about? And I've got a feeling we covered maybe some of them already, but yeah, please tell us.
Yeah, we did cover some. I mean, like for example, the search results giving you ideas for new products or services, understanding who your traffic are, and you can, if you want to think creatively. So for example, every website has visitors who just shouldn't be there. It just happens. As much as you try to qualify your traffic, even so, it happens, right? So there could be people coming from outside of your geographical target market. But for example, another situation I was in, I was working with an industrial wax manufacturer. So they made lots of different types of wax, beeswax, duxwax, and other kind of wax for use in factory settings. So it was very much a B2B business. And they had done incredibly well in getting their site very well positioned in Google. And as a result, it became very clear that a lot of people coming to their site who were consumers, and they just wanted to buy some beeswax to make some candles. And these were not obviously the target market for this company. But there were so many of these people, when we really started to break it down and understand what was going on, they actually ended up creating a very separate e-commerce site. And basically, as soon as you got onto their main site, it said, basically, if you're a consumer looking for a small order, click here, and immediately take those people away from the B2B side, put them into the e-commerce site where they sold just the sort of wax that consumers are looking for that want to make their own candles, for example, in small quantities, and let them. This is not complicated. It's not complicated sales. It's very, they had a couple of people maybe looking after it, but it wasn't a big deal, and yet it generated a whole load of side income without too much effort. And took away all those unqualified visitors and made some money out of them.
Yeah, brilliant. I love that example. I love that example. What are some other hidden gems that might be missing in the analytic?
It's just about thinking about what's going on, who's coming, what else could we do that would get them to convert. So we talked about the search engine, we talked about different types of visitors, and just I mean, again, I mean, there are other examples like that. There are examples where there's too much techie talk on the site and people are missing important information. A lot of businesses kind of want to be cute with their navigational headings. They have cute words or words that mean something to them. And again, it doesn't mean much to the visitor, and people don't click on them. And you go back to saying, look, let's just be really clear about where this should take a visitor, and then you can use cute words when they get there, and making a difference that way. The lack of calls to action at specific points in the copy where people are probably going, hey, tell me more about this. Things like the videos, right? I mean, I have a client who makes an amazing amount of video, and yet he was kind of pretty much starting every video with, hi, this is so and so, and I'm blah blah blah, and it was very boring. And well, because he said
Yeah,
it all before, and he had really great content once you got past that, and he had a lot of guests and the rest of it. But if you look at the data for the video, you could see the consumption figures just literally falling off. Like he lost at least 50% of his viewers within the first 30 seconds, and
Oh,
90% by the first minute. And you can't argue with that data. And that allows you to go back and say, look, you need to change something about the way that you're starting these videos out, because people are just not hooked. You got to hook people you got to do this differently. And so just really looking at what's going on and where the clues are that something isn't working and that you can do it differently.
great points, great points. And I love the fact you tied the video into that too, because yeah, it's super important. Every YouTube tutorial on optimizing your videos talks about that. Like you've got anywhere from 2 to 15 seconds essentially to
Right.
grab someone's attention.
And
And
YouTube's a good example because if you look on YouTube, there's a number or under each video, there's a number of views, right? Which I think can be misleading because I can't remember what the exact. It's in my book, and I'm sorry, I off the top of my head can't remember the exact number of seconds, but it fires the number of views. A view is fired after a certain number of seconds of viewing the video. So it's not the number of people who've watched the whole thing; it's the number of people who've gone past a certain number of seconds, and there's a big difference there.
big, huge.
So I feel like the number of views doesn't give the person who owns the video a good enough understanding of, because it would be easy to look at that and go, okay, lots of people are watching the video, but it's
Right.
not a lot. It's no more than 30 seconds, I think.
Yep.
So if you really want to know how successful your video is, you need more than that.
I'm so glad you brought this up because I did want to touch on the term and the direction that we're going right here, which is the vanity metrics. Now, for somebody that may not be technologically inclined, what are vanity metrics aside from just the view count that you're talking about there, and what do we really need to be paying attention to?
Yeah, that's a great question. Um, so a lot of people want to. They know that they should look at analytics, but they really don't want to because they are overwhelming and threatening and too much data. Um, and so a vanity metric is something that you can very easily look at and feel good about. Something like, literally, did I get more visitors this week than I did last week?
Mm-hmm.
And if the answer to that is yes, then I assume that everything's going well and I can close up the analytics and go do something else. And the problem is that that's just not true. If you get X number of more visitors this week than you did last week, but they all leave, so what, right? It hasn't done you any good. I mean, the actual question is, did I get more of the right kind of visitor than I did last week?
Right.
And did they do anything? I mean, did I get more conversions, more people doing what I wanted this week than I did last week? So yeah, vanity metrics, I mean, a bounce rate. A lot of people like to talk about the bounce rate, which is the number of people who visit your site and leave immediately. And people obsess about bounce rate. I need to get my bounce rate down. And yet, in some ways, they're thinking about the wrong thing. Because, as I say, there'll always be people who come to your site for the wrong reason, and just often, I've told a couple of stories about what we can do to be creative with those people, but sometimes you just want to get rid of them. I mean, I can't believe this, but my last name is Games. It's spelled Gamse. It's actually anglicized from another language, but so there is a reason for it. But I can't believe that people come to my website looking for computer games, and they actually spell it computer and then Gamse. And it's like, what?
Wow.
Yeah, it makes no sense to me. But those people are never going to buy. They're not interested in me. They're not interested in what I do, right? It's a complete mistake. They shouldn't be there. Let them go.
Yeah.
Don't worry about it. And if you isolate those, I mean, one of the nice things about a decent analytics tool is that you can isolate people with certain characteristics. So, you could take those, isolate those people and take them out of your results so that you can see a more truthful, bounce rate, for example. And the other thing about bounce rate is that let's say you have the 50-50 bounce rate and people go, oh no, 50% of my people are leaving my site immediately. And I say, yeah. However, 50% of people are staying there. What about them? What kind of experience are they having? Are they converting?
Yeah.
So instead of obsessing about the people who didn't stay, let's start out by seeing if we can improve the experience of people who did.
I love that. I absolutely love that. That is wonderful. And you're right. It's something that we don't think about because just the way the human brain works, we like to
Right,
think
right,
about the negative because it's easier. It's so much
right.
easier because of our survival brain. But I'm so happy that you said that. And I have to interject back into the whole point about people going on your site and looking for computer games. And the story you told earlier about the candle wax makes me think you should have an Amazon affiliate link on that page, linking them back to a computer game search on Amazon. Like,
Right,
talk
right,
about
right.
some opportunity, right?
Yeah, yeah. I'm not sure about the branding, but okay. Yes. Yeah.
Well, it's just one little, you know, one little button. Did you
Mm.
by chance get here by mistake looking for computer games?
Yes. Yeah. Right.
Oh, fun stuff, fun stuff. All right, well, we have covered a lot of ground here, some great insights, obviously. So I can't thank you enough, Philippa, for sharing those with us. So if somebody actually is interested in your services, not computer games, where do they go to learn more about you and potentially hire you?
So I would actually say, LinkedIn is a great place to find me. I think I'm the only person in the world with my name, so it's easy to find me on LinkedIn. I'm always happy to connect with people. My website is called websitesthatwin.com. And on that website, actually, there's a free ebook, which is called Five Hidden Gems. It's got some of the stories that we told today and a couple of others, but it's really about inspiration for people. It's all in English. It's talking about things that we found in the analytics without kind of a load of charts and stuff, but just what did we find? What did we do about it? That people might, or what did we look for? That people might be able to get an idea. Like, I wonder if that's happening to me,
Hmm.
and just intended to give business owners some level of inspiration.
Perfect. Love it. Well, guys, those links are going to be below there. So definitely go over there, click, check those out. And now we are at the end of the video, which means we are going to stop talking about entrepreneurship completely. And we're going to go back and have some fun with Philippa. So, Philippa, this is
Uh,
the this is the randomized question portion of our show. So I always am curious to know, what is your guilty pleasure?
I don't know. What's my guilty pleasure? Um, there are some computer games I like to play.
Okay. Okay. What do you find yourself getting stuck in?
There's a really strange game called Sherlock. I think it's a match three game, but it's actually about a library with a load of old books in it, and these characters that can jump into the books and go and find clues about different mysteries. And I mean, I don't like video games that are like shoot 'em up games. It's not my interest at all.
Right.
Um, but I do spend some time on my iPad playing these strange match three games.
I've been there. I've used to play a bunch of scavenger hunt type of games
Yeah,
on my
exactly.
phone. Yeah. And
It's not the ones that are just kind of vacuous, but I like ones that have a story to them.
and you know what? I love that you said that, because it was the question kind of goes into what I wanted to ask next, is what is your favorite story or movie that you just never get tired of?
Oh, that's easy. I don't know if you'll be familiar with this, but we grew up on a couple of books called Winnie the Pooh.
I remember Winnie the Pooh, of course.
Okay, well, Pooh has amazing philosophy on life,
He
and
does.
together with his friends, and I just, yeah, I still read those, I must say.
That's lovely.
I mean,
I
on our property recently, we had to dig a big hole because we had some issues with irrigation. And I said to somebody, we could catch a heffalump. And he didn't know what I was talking about. And it was very sad.
Oh. Oh. Well, I would have got it. I
Yeah.
would have laughed. And then the last question, what is a travel spot that's on your bucket list that you have not yet been to?
New Zealand.
New Zealand. Boom, right
Yeah.
there. Okay.
It looks great. And I would love to. I mean, I love mountains. I love lakes. It looks beautiful. But it's a
Yeah.
long way away.
That's what I hear. It's a long
Mm.
way away. You really got to want to go.
Mhm.
Yeah, but I definitely agree. I love landscapes. I do photography as a hobby, and yeah, landscapes, architecture, all that stuff. Love it. Well, again, Philippa, thank you so much for coming on here today. This has been a pleasure talking with you and hearing your stories, your insight. Guys, you know what to do. You like this video, you share it out with your network. We got some great tips in here, some great insights to share. Everybody's got a website these days if you're in business, and there are things that either you or someone you're connected to, they're missing. They're losing out on customers, revenue. Help them by sharing this show. Again, all those links are going to be below. Philippa, thank you so much for coming on. It was a real pleasure having you here.
Thank you so much. It's been great.
Absolutely. All right, guys. Peace. We'll see you in the next one.